1,000 years ago, over 100,000 man-made earthen mounds graced the North American landscape east of the Mississippi River, and some to the west. Some were conical, peaked burial mounds, others flat-topped, designed to support pole buildings, while others had been formed as effigy mounds in the shape of animals, both common and extinct. Many smaller mounds had been placed carefully, oriented so as to determine the timing of celestial events, like many prehistoric megalithic structures worldwide. Most of the mound sites had been places of habitation, often located near a river, but a few large earthworks seem to have been dedicated ceremonial centers like Poverty Point in Louisiana. We do not know what the people living there called their cities, towns, and villages, but they were certainly the ancestors of the present-day Native Americans. Linguists claim there were 600 languages in the Americas, many from 5 to 7 language groups, and others completely unrelated. Archaeologists have divided ancient America into different time periods, but more importantly for our study, different cultural periods. The dates they present do vary depending on which university one is using for a reference. The Adena culture built mounds for 1,000 years, from 1000 BC to 0. The Hopewell culture built mounds for 700 years, from 200 BC to 500 CE. That was followed by a 500-year lull in mound building. Then, the Mississippian cultures built mounds for 300 years from 1000 CE to 1300 CE. No one knows how old some of the stone structures found in North America are. But they claim the building of earthen mounds began with the Adena culture in roughly 1000 BC. That date could be considered questionable because of earlier sites. The Lower Jackson Mound near Poverty Point in Louisiana dates back thousands of years earlier. One way or another, the Adena culture flourished until about year 0 and produced some very interesting artifacts that I will be showcasing in a special video. Many Adena sites were clustered in Ohio. In the same area were many Hopewell sites. Hopewell culture began all over the East prior to the dissolution of the Adena peoples, so they must have lived near one another for 100 or 200 years or so and shared cultures. They did both build mounds. They did both smoke pipes and more. The Hopewell culture flourished and built mounds for 700 years until 500 AD. What followed was a dramatic decline in population for 500 years across North America. That was followed by a worldwide warming period, during which time Native Americans began to cultivate maize. Finally, mound building began again in 1000 CE. Eventually, Cahokia, Illinois boasted a population of over 20,000 people during what the archaeologists call the Mississippian period, which flourished for 300 years. The reason for the demise of the Mississippian period remains a mystery, one that has fomented plenty of speculation. In Moundville, Alabama, and Cahokia, people began to leave in about 1300 and had completely abandoned the sites as habitations by 1400. In fact, all of the mound sites, thousands of them, were abandoned at that same time. Further, it seems The larger places of habitation were abandoned all across North America during that period as well. We shall be delving into this mystery in another special video. I'm Mark Stanley. What got me interested in all of this was when I began to study for a manuscript for a fiction book titled Spirit Arrow. My Native American story takes place in Arkansas and Louisiana in the 17th century, about 100 years before European settlers arrived on the scene. What captured my attention when I studied for the first time was this piece of art, this artifact. Staring at the photograph of it on the screen, I found myself declaring, I'm going to draw that. Prior to that moment, I had no notion of drawing anything. That drawing led to the creation of 37 more renderings of artifacts I was attracted to. Shell, stone, copper gorget, tobacco pipes, pottery, and statuettes. I used the drawings to illustrate the chapter pages in the book. However, the first time I tried it, I traced and reproduced it accurately like an archaeological drawing, but it didn't look good. When one is looking at the shell artifact, somehow the eye ignores the imperfections, but in black and white it didn't work. Now, don't flee, this is not an art class, but I must explain how I rendered these designs so cleanly. With my time machine, I brought the original artist forward in time, escorted him into my shop where I was using the workbench as a drawing table with the shop lights, pencils, papers, erasers, straight edges, rulers, etc. And I asked him, I really like this design. Could you do it again here, please? So with modern tools, he did it. So I realized that on paper, the symmetrical designs needed to be expressed symmetrically. The non-symmetrical designs I reproduced accurately. What I did not engage in was artistic expression, except for the cover art, which I gleaned off of this copper piece from Spiro, Oklahoma. And the Calusa cat, which was kind of a mistake, but it worked out because it represents the main female character in the story. I'll do a video on that. Some of the artifacts were in such poor condition that it was difficult to discern all of the elements, especially on the edges where they were broken or scuffed up. So if I could see one clean element or the best one, I reproduced it all the way around. That is how I extracted these designs out of the artifacts. I have no idea what any of these things mean. And I resist speculating. I prefer data over speculation. I'm going to make an effort in this series not to harangue the archaeological community too much, but I must say there is far too much speculation that goes on there for my tastes. That said, concerning the meaning of these artifacts, I think we as a group would welcome any traditional knowledge that originates from native folks' oral traditions in the comments section. In this series, we will be looking at the artifacts, where they originated from, and anything we can find out about them, highlighting the culture and the beauty of these people that lived in North America long ago. For the Algonquins, the underwater panther was the most powerful underworld entity, deemed the master of all water creatures. Many tales tell of the underwater panther's perpetual opposition to the thunderbirds, the lords of the underworld versus the lords of the sky. This dualistic posture was considered to have a balancing or harmonizing effect on society. A thunderbird effigy mound. A petroglyph. And an underwater panther petroglyph. From translations of various regional languages, this deity has been described in many ways. The great lynx, the fabulous night panther, great underwater wildcat, or simply the water panther. So what are the recognizable characteristics of the underwater panther that can be observed using the few artifacts we have access to? First, ferocity. They are almost always depicted as snarling or roaring. This is a cat that doesn't take no for an answer. This is an entity one would tread very lightly around. Indians were known to perform a ceremony to honor the underwater panther prior to crossing a waterway. But there are exceptions. This shell-tempered representation from the Rose Mound in Cross County, Arkansas. These other artifacts are from the Arkansas-Oklahoma region, made during the Mississippian era, and are obviously stylistically similar. Here is one that is smiling. This very unusual pipe's stem came out of its side and was found after the flood of 1913 along the Monongahela River in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. The talons are visible here, which is a consistent feature of the underwater panther. Another regular feature is thick, dragon-like whiskers. Sometimes they are sporting horns and spikes on the back. And at least 4 examples here have saber teeth. That conjures up an interesting question. If this pipe was made, say, 1,000 years ago, how did the artist know about the saber-tooth physiology when the saber-toothed tiger proper had been extinct for over 10,000 years at that time? This beautiful pipe is in the Brooklyn Museum. Some have suggested it may be the underwater panther, but I don't think so. There is not one feature of the underwater panther expressed. No talons or thick whiskers, no saber teeth, no horns, and no spikes. You tell me, but this looks like a female black panther in repose, and not particularly fierce. I like this one so much I drew it and actually integrated it into the story. along with several others. Now, the underwater panther is traditionally said to make his home on Michipicoten Island. Let's go there. Michipicoten Island is in Ontario, in the northeastern part of Lake Superior. The island is made up of ancient lava bedrock related to volcanism of the mid-continent rift system and is heavily forested with over 20 inland lakes. The highest point on the island is 298 meters above Lake Superior. The underwater panther is known for guarding the vast amounts of copper in Lake Superior and the Great Lakes region. Indigenous people mined copper, as attested to by many copper artifacts found in many sites. By the 18th century, the mining of copper was strictly prohibited by the native peoples of the region, particularly from Michipicoten Island. As a side note, check out Ile Royale. The geology is very interesting. These two underwater panther pipes, made from brown catlinite stone, are from the Great Lakes region. And one more thing. In 2003, archaeologist Brad Lepper suggested that what has been called the alligator effigy mound in Granville, Ohio, actually may represent the underwater panther. Lepper posits that the early European settlers, when learning from Native Americans that the mound represented a fierce creature that lived in the water and ate people, mistakenly assumed that they were referring to an alligator. I tend to agree. First, there was the language barrier. Second, the head is not alligator-shaped, nor is the body. And the way the tail curves on the end is more suggestive of a cat. Well, that is all for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Bonsoir, mon ami. Have a wonderful evening.